Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Devin and this is my first video. So if it kind of sucks and the camera quality is obviously trash, I am sorry. If I get a camera and I get better at this, it'll obviously improve. But y'all are definitely here to hear a creepy case and not look at me. So it'll be fun. So basically, I've decided that I'm gonna do like conspiracy theories and like creepy murder cases, unsolved murders, Reddit stories, all that fun stuff that other YouTube channels do. I just have a big interest in it, and it's fun for me to look up these cases and research them and tell y'all about them. So I'm just gonna tell y'all. But I look at my phone, it's because I have the names of the people on my phone and they're French, so they're kind of difficult for me, so I'm not going to have them on the top of my head because they're foreign. So let me just jump right in. My story for today is the Papin or Papin, whichever floats your boat. I think I heard Papin in a documentary I watched, so that's their name, the Papin sisters. They committed a very gruesome crime. They just took no mercy, basically. But they came from a pretty fucked up family. That's the easiest way to sum that up. Their parents were Clemence, that's the mom, and their father was Gustave. So basically a background on their family. Clemence had been having an affair and Gustave had his suspicions about it, but he loved her and he was like, I'm gonna ride or die out for this bitch even though she is not loyal for me. So we all know these hoes ain't loyal. Gustave knew, but he was riding and dying for her, so he just moved right along. So she became pregnant and he was like, okay, let's get married. So they got married. And their firstborn, Emily, basically, but I'm going to say Emily because it's easier for me. Emily was born in 1902, and she had a rough childhood, the firstborn. She was entered into an orphanage at, let me see the age, I am so sorry. She was entered into an orphanage at 9 or 10 years old, and later they found out that the father had raped her, which is so sad that I just can't even imagine. That's so sad. So that's why she was entered, and basically, her mom did not give her love and affection, and she was just like, fuck everybody. I do not appreciate y'all, and she just did not like them. And her dad was an alcoholic, and I guess that led to him taking an advantage on her because his wife showed him no affection, and he was just like, let me just do what I gotta do. So I mean, that's terrible, but it happens, and that's all I'm going to say because it makes me very sad. So Emily decided she was going to join the covenant and become a nun. And, I personally thought as a nun, you're a virgin for the rest of your life. But I guess they make, like, you can join even though the circumstances, but that's what I thought. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know much about religion or nuns, so it's not my place. So basically, after all that happened, where did I get that from? Clemence had 2 more children, both of which she and her husband sent at an early age, so they sent to an orphanage, which is so sad. Like, they had 2 more kids, and they're like, oh, we don't want these children, bye. Like, that's sad. So let's get started. That's before the Papin sisters were even born. So let's get started in them. The firstborn was Christine. She was difficult. Well, no, she's not the first one. She's the middle child because Emily left to be a nun. So she's basically the older one. She was born, and her parents gave her away to her father's brother, so she didn't live with her parents. Not brother, sister. I am so sorry, I'm bad at this. She was there for 7 years, and then she entered a Catholic orphanage, which seems to be their favorite thing to send their kids to, because all of them are going there. She wanted to join a covenant like her sister Emily, but her mother did not allow it. And her mother decided to place her in employment because she was old enough. She was a good worker, and her personality was more, like, it was stronger than her sister Leah, which is the other Papin sister. And, her employer said she's a good worker, no problems, whatever. But Leah, the youngest, was very shy, and she was slightly not as intelligent as her sister Christine. And basically, she grew up with her mother's brother, while Christine grew up with her father's sister. So they were not growing up together. And she lived with his brother until he died. And she was in a religious orphan until she was 15. Another orphanage. So this is where it gets interesting, because that was obviously not the interesting part. But Christine and Leah, I'm probably not saying Leah right. It's probably something else. But I'm just going to say Leah. They were of the age to work, so they were fortunate enough to land a job as maids together for a retired lawyer and his wife and daughter. Their daughter was named Genevieve. That's how I want to say it. I'm not very sure. But Genevieve was an adult living with her parents. Guess that's normal. And why am I having so much trouble? And his wife was basically the madam. I'm just going to call her madam. They were good housemaids. They didn't really have any problems. They dressed up every Sunday for church. And they have reputations of being diligent workers, and they had proper behavior. Like, on the documentary, they said something about that all the other, like, people in the neighborhood or the people in the town were jealous because they had such good housemaids. Like, they had a good reputation. And there was no red flags that they were going to be freaking crazy. And they preferred each other's company over anyone else's. Like, they had 2 hours a day for break, and instead of going outside and enjoying the day, because they were always cooped up in the house cleaning and cooking, they decided to be in their rooms alone with each other. And in 1933, the Papin sisters had been with the LeClanes, the family, for 6 years, so they were pretty comfortable with each other. Christine, the older one, was 27, and Leah was 21. So they have grown up, basically. They're adults. And on February 2nd of that year, Miss LeClane and her daughter arrived home at around 5:30 to a mostly dark house, which is already freaking creepy. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Basically, they have been having problems with the iron. The iron would, like, not shock, but the fuse blew and electricity went out. And this happened a couple of times to Christine while she was ironing, and the madam was just not having it. She was like, I'm tired of this. Like, she was nitpicky and wanted everything perfect, and she was just upset with it. And it was odd because that day the iron returned from the repair guy, and he was like, there's nothing wrong with it, like, it's a fine iron, I guess. And when Christine informed that Miss LeClane, the madam, that it broke, she was furious, and basically a dispute broke out. So, obviously, there were difficulties in the past. Like, she was a stickler for, like, a good job. She wanted a job well done. And she would even put on white gloves to check dust around the house. Like, that's freaking crazy. Who does that? Not I. And basically, so the dispute happened. They were arguing. And Christine, the oldest one, snapped. She was at the top of the stairs on the first landing, and she lunged at Genevieve, the daughter of Miss LeClain, and she basically gouged her eyes out. Like, didn't go for anything else, just went straight for the eyes. Like, imagine some bitch coming at you and just going and poking your eyes out. What kind of shit? Like, how do you get them with your hands so precisely that you can gouge them out? Like, I can't even fathom that. Like, that's crazy. But anyways, like, this girl basically did not see it coming, literally. But, so she gouged her eyes out, and I'm joking like this is funny, but it's not. I'm terrible. I'm sorry. I'll just tell the rest of the story. Leah joined quickly, the youngest sister, and grabbed Miss LeClain. Christine ordered her to gouge her eyes out too. So she went and got a knife and a hammer. She proceeded back upstairs where both girls were bludgeoning, which basically means they were just finishing them off. Like, they were hitting them and, like, blood everywhere. That's basically what that means. And sliced the mother and daughter. The sisters then bashed their heads in, and that was that. Experts said that the incident lasted about 30 minutes. So basically, they got in and they got out. That's what I'm concluding from this. Like, that's crazy. So Mr. LeClain was supposed to meet them for dinner, and Miss LeClain and her daughter never showed up. So they arrived at the house, and the door was bolted from the inside, and the men were unable to enter, although they knew someone was home. The house was completely dark except for a faint glow coming from the upper level, and I believe that's where the maids stay, so that's where the light was coming from. And they thought this was suspicious, so they went to the police. So the investigation starts, and I would say that this was a pretty easy case. Like, there was no investigating or anything. I just thought it was interesting because of how gruesome it was. That's why I'm telling it. But basically, the cops come in and they find a brutal scene, and most of the injuries to the two women, sorry, I had a hiccup, were on their faces and their heads. However, the daughter's legs and buttocks revealed deep knife lacerations. And I read somewhere else, this isn't included in the one that I'm looking at the names and the details of, but I read somewhere else that they, like, tore apart their genitals and apparently took blood from the daughter's vagina and put it into the mother's, and something gross like that. And I don't know if that's true. I read it on one article, but it's not on this one. I just thought I would add that in because that's how gruesome this murder was. Like, their genitals were mutilated, basically, and it was just fucking crazy that they decided to do that. But everything was, like, they were basically unrecognizable. That's how much they bashed their heads in. And the daughter's eyes laid on the top stairs. So imagine walking up the stairs and you see two eyeballs there. I'd be like, huh? And hidden within the folds of the madam scarf was her eyeballs, which is an interesting place to put them because they just fell in there. So, next to their bodies laid a bloody kitchen knife with a dark handle, and blood covered the entire scene and even splattered the walls 2 meters above the body. So it's basically a bloodbath. Obviously, they hit them with a hammer. It's obviously going to be messy. They searched the rest of the house, and they were worried about the maids. They were like, they probably were killed too. Like, where are they? They started searching the house, and they found the maid's room, and it was locked, so they had to get a locksmith to unlock it. And the police finally get the locksmith there, and he opens it, and they find the 2 maids, the sisters, in the bed, nude together. So obviously there was some incest going on, because I personally would not lay in bed naked if I had a sister with my sister. That's just strange. But next to the bed was the bloody hammer, and they basically immediately confessed to the crime. So this was an easy job for the police. They didn't have to do anything. They just had to find it and find the sisters, who I guess were celebrating with sex. I don't know what they were doing in bed naked. It's weird, and I don't know, not gonna go there, whatever. So basically, they get arrested, and the trial begun. And Christine was in complete distress because she was separated from her sister. They finally eventually let the sisters meet, so she wouldn't be as distressed. And the way Christine behaved and spoke implied that there was a sexual relationship, which we obviously gathered because they were in bed naked. Not a normal thing. The court brought in doctors because obviously something was not right with them mentally. So they needed to examine whether they were sane or not. And they said Christine looked at the world, had an indifference toward the world, and she indicated she had no attachments except to Leah. So they were each other's world, basically. And the doctors reported Christine's affection for her sister was a family devotion, and they did not detect any kind of sexual content within the relationship, which is weird because they were obviously having a sexual relationship. On the other hand, Leah looked up to Christine as a big sister and mother figure. The evaluation came back stating the sister had no mental disorders and no family history. The doctors deemed the girls completely insane and completely sane, and indicated that their usually closeness caused the girls to act out together, both equally responsible for the murder. So they basically said they're sane, which I did not gather because they do not act sane. But the case was wrapped up pretty fast. They found Christine and Leah guilty. Obviously, they confessed. And Leah received a 10-year sentence, and Christine was gonna be sentenced to death. But then the sentence was changed to life in prison. I don't know why one got longer than the other. I think it's because Christine started it and ordered Leah to do these things, but that's my personal opinion. It doesn't really say. But, so now we're going to go more into their motives. Like, why did they do this crazy thing that no one would, in their right mind, even think about doing? So basically, all of France was shocked. There had never been so much brutality in a murder. And many people began to wonder, why did they kill their employers when they were so good to them? Like, they had a bed to sleep in, they had heat, they could eat the same meals as them. Like, they were pretty well off, and they had good salaries. So a bunch of, intelligent people started investigating this case to see what their motives were. And basically, they came up with class struggle. Class struggle. Not that these girls are crazy, but that they were maids. And they said that this was a reflection of oppressive class divisions and poor working conditions and y'all know what I'm saying. And others believed that they worked in a decent employment, So there was no reason for this crime. It was just out of craziness or whatever. Other people think it was deeply rooted in their childhood, which I believe. They did not have love or affection. They spent years away from their family and with their family members, so not really their parents, who supposedly loved them. Although they eventually had to go to a Catholic orphanage, there's no evidence that they suffered or were not cared for. So basically, yeah. The girls did not seem normal to the fourth doctor. Like, there was 4 doctors that checked them out. He proposed that the relationship was a merge of their personalities. Like, Leah had lost her identity and she was, like, dominated by the personality of Christine, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I guess he's saying that they merged as a person, and Leah didn't have a personality. She was just Christine, if that makes sense. And in essence, there was no Christine and Leah. The killer was a joint personality of 2, and they called it a third identity, which is an interesting twist because I know that there's something wrong with these girls, but back then they did not know about, I mean, they probably knew about mental illnesses, but it wasn't as big as it is now. Like, we all know about mental illnesses. But they were basically saying that they merged together and became one, which is a third identity, which is kind of cool to think about. But it's not a reason to kill. So basically, he was just trying to say what's wrong with them in the head, I guess. Another, like, suspicion and motive that people came up with was that the madam found out about the homosexual incest relationship that they were having, which would make sense why they had troubles. And another person was like, is that why they gouged out their eyes? Because the madam saw something that she didn't need to see? And is that why they started out? Who knows? There's not a lot of evidence or, like, anything for this case. It's kind of short and, like, kind of to the point, but that's an interesting thing to think. So after they were convicted and they're in prison, what happened to the sisters was Christine did not do well in prison. She had madness, like, fits. Did I say that right? She was just acting mad. No, she was acting crazy. And she became severely depressed without her sister and started refusing to eat. She was transferred to a mental institute, and then she starved herself and died in May of 1937. Leah did very well in prison and served only 8 years of her 10-year sentence. In 1941, she became a free woman, which, to me personally, she slaughtered, well, her and her sister murdered 2 women, and she was free in 8 years. Like, that does not seem right to me. But who knows? Like, the court system's fucked up. We all know. But I just think that's crazy. She lived with her mother in France and worked into more housekeeping, but she kept a different name. So I don't know who hired this crazy bitch. I guess, like, news wasn't like it is here. Like, I guess her picture didn't get out, or she changed her appearance. Some way, like, she did change her name, but some way she got away with working after being a freaking killer. And basically, some case, like, it was a very long time ago, and reports of this is kind of bits and pieces, and, like, people say one thing and other people say another thing. Some people say that she died in 1982, but others say that they found Leah living in hospice in a center in France, and the woman had suffered a stroke and she was partially paralyzed and unable to speak, and then she passed away in 2001. So that's a 20-year gap. So take as you will, like, she ended up dying either way. But yeah, that's the case, and I think it's very interesting and intriguing, but there's not a lot to it. Like, they committed the crime and they confessed. Like, it was a pretty short and simple case, which I thought was good for my video to talk about. But yeah, let me know what y'all thought. I personally think that they had mental illnesses and that created problems with them, and they were definitely connected. And I think personally that the mom found out about not the mom, the madam found out about the homosexual relationship and just had enough. Like, she was not fucking with it. And I could see that being an argument. And maybe it was actually over the iron. I don't see why you need to kill someone, kill your boss, from them saying, why isn't the iron working, when they went and got it fixed? Like, I don't think that's something to kill someone over. So there had to be a deeper meaning, but there's not much to this case. So I guess they basically just had something wrong with them, or they were just evil people. I personally think their childhood had a lot to do with this, and that's why they were the way they were and stuck to each other, because they didn't have a mom or a dad, and they had their aunt and uncle, and which cannot give you the same love as a mom or a dad, which they can, but it's not the same as having a mom or a dad in your life. And I think that traumatically affected them, and that happens to a lot of people that do things like this. So that's that. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think. I'm sorry that my camera quality sucks, and I'm sorry if I told this story kind of shitty. It's my first video. So if y'all like it, and if y'all have cases that you want me to talk about, I will definitely go in more in depth in my next video. I just wanted to try and see how it goes. So let me know, subscribe or whatever. Thanks.